Radio 1 FM 90.
Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for making time to join us on this edition of Spectrum. It's Budget Day. Well, today at Kololo Ceremonial Grounds, President Yoweri Museveni, through the Finance Minister, Matia Kasaija, delivered the national budget, which is a 72 trillion shilling budget. That's the size of the resource envelope. And there are a number of issues that have come out from Kololo. For instance, we know very well that there are a number of things that are going to be undertaken in the next financial year, which includes building the standard gauge railway. There's going to be focus on irrigation for agriculture. There's also going to be focus on job creation. There's also going to be focus on ensuring that there's cheap money for the private sector in the country. And efforts are going to be geared towards growing the economy tenfold, according to President Yoweri Museveni, who made a statement after the reading of the budget. Our work today here in studio will be to analyze this speech, to try and look at some of the issues that stood out and those that we need actually to address to make sure that this budget performs as expected by many Ugandans. I have a panel of three today, but already two guests are in studio. Let me introduce Dr. Peter Bayenda, economist, lecturing at the School of Economics and Management Sciences of Makerere University. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Bayenda.
Thank you. Good evening, listener.
Also in studio, Ms. Penina Nayiga. She is a research associate at the Uganda Debt Network, who are members of the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. Good evening, Penina. Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm humbled by the invite. Good evening, our listeners.
We also expect to be joined by the Honorable Geoffrey Kanya, who is the Toronto North County MP. He will be joining us on this platform to share his views. Very quickly, I'll begin with you, Dr. Bayenda. The speech was delivered. We already know about the figures because the budget was passed some time back by Parliament, and we have been doing discussions around it. Today you hear the speech which actually delivers this budget, explaining deeper the strategy, looking at the challenges. Both the Minister of Finance and the President laying the direction where they want this budget to go. Very quickly, your initial thoughts on the budget speech there.
Yeah, thank you so much. One, I want to start by congratulating the colleagues from the Ministry of Finance for having worked very hard, and all the sectors, all the programs to have this budget, but also congratulate the Parliament for having fulfilled their constitutional mandate, for having tried to synthesize the budget, saying add here, do this. So we congratulate them. Listening to the budget speech today, on the face value, the budget looks so good. Right away from the theme of the budget, full monetization of the economy. You see that there is through commercial agriculture, and that tells you that by June 2025, we expect that we shall have now zero subsistence sector. Everybody will have moved into the money economy, which is nice. Industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation, and market access. But also listening to the minister, there are some interventions that he has talked about which, if well implemented, can create wonders. For example, I saw 2.07 billion that has been given to Jenabos. I think this is good. This promotes local initiatives.
Those are the makers of Covidex.
They have so many
other herbal medicines,
Flu, and so on. A lot of herbal medicine that people are using for flu, for injuries. So that means this man can scale up. The professor can scale up the production, create more jobs. I know they is working with so many younger people. Then we can export, starting within our region. Another thing that I saw which is so nice is the irrigation for agriculture. Because what crops need is not rain, but crops need water. constant supply of water. So if this can be done, I don't know how it is going to be done, because the irrigation equipments remain expensive, inaccessible, the quality. So if this is done very well and farmers are able to access the irrigation equipments and irrigate, then we see people joining the commercial agriculture we are talking about. Job creation, manufacturing, jobs are in manufacturing. So if we can increase our manufacturing sector, that means we'll have more people employed, more younger people employed, and we shall reduce on so many things, including the kicks that we are seeing in town here, as most of these younger people will be busy. ICT for the younger people, we need to tap. Our advantage here is our population dividend, the younger people, the knowledge economy. We can tap on these people to come up with initiatives. Already our colleagues in Ethiopia are doing that. But also another thing that we need to note on this budget is that this is the last budget for NDP 3, and then it will set us into the NDP 4. And you see that when you had the minister talked of that, we have now to move from the current GDP of around 53 USD billion to 500 billion by 2040. So if we are to go there, that means we have to grow by 10%. So that means we need to work very hard.
That's the tenfold that the president is talking about.
And looking at, we've been growing at between 5, 6, the other time COVID 2. So we need to do a lot. I hope we shall get medicine. Of course, one of the key hindrances has been corruption. The president has talked about corruption today, reminding the MPs how they came about in the parliament. People fought after seeing things were not going right.
He actually said they are insulting the heroes who died in the liberation war.
Because of that. And so the deals we have been hearing about, and these deals affect the sectors. Because when someone comes with a project, and then for you say you want 30% of that project, how will the project activities be implemented? So that's how we have ended up with quack things. And those who are supposed to monitor, the one asking. So I think it should be incumbent on all of us Ugandans to say no to corruption. I am sure that if we can say no to corruption, just like I heard in the news here what Bob Wine said, we see that we can do a lot.
All right.
We can do a lot.
Those are your initial thoughts. We'll be digging deeper on some of the issues that you've put across. Let's hear from you as civil society. You are key players in the budgeting process. You contributed to some of the information that is probably in this budget to shape the budget with your views. The budget speech has been made today. Your initial thoughts, what was your impression?
Basing on the outlook on how the budget is going to be financed, we as a civil society, I see it's a bit worrying. The fact that the budget is going to be financed through borrowing, a huge percentage of it is going to through borrowing. And the other thing, when you look at the revenue, when actually everyone can have a look at it, like previously, basing on how URA has been performing. In the last financial years, we see it had a shortfall of 1.9 trillion. Just a scenario, just like what if the same thing happens this year? Yes, which means we shall go back to borrowing, and of course it will be increasing. The fact that our debt is it keeps on increasing year per year, and it's really alarming. Just from 2023 June 2023 to December 2023, we had over 7 trillion debt that accumulated by that. Then if at all we add on another probably 7 trillion by half the year, half another year, which means that it will be escalating, it will be increasing rapidly, and it will be worrying to the economy because it will be worrying to the economy because it's us who are going to pay that debt back. Then the other thing, apart from, because actually I think debt servicing took the lion's share. It's good to pay back that debt, to reduce on the burden. But the other thing is, I would maybe talk to URA, to increase the domestic revenue mobilization strategies, at least to make sure that doesn't default. At least this time round, it should go even below the 1 trillion that it did, when it comes to shortfalls. When it comes to the projected GDP, I see they say in the budget is 225 trillion, from 184 trillion. I see that is a good move. If at all we do borrow and and this debt doesn't become unproductive debt, it will be really good for us. The economy will be expanding, and at least if at all they try to invest their private sector, like he mentioned, like the honorable mentioned, at least you see the economy will be kindly improving. Then the other thing that really impressed me was on health, whereby at least some money was like on health, a lot of like there's some additional financing on health. That is good, because an economy whereby people are not doing so well when it comes to their health, of course your human capital will not be that productive and you'll not be able to get what you really want. And also the other thing was on agriculture. I said that some additional financing on agriculture it increased from 11.1% to 11.3%. That is good, being that our backbone as Uganda, it is on what? On agriculture. If at all they increase they improve our agriculture, at least we improve it by and become to stop exporting raw products to.
That's agro-based industrialization.
Yes, agro-based industrialization. That would be good, because when you look at one of the drivers to the 10-fold agenda, it is one of them, agro-industrialization. Though when it comes to programs, it's not among the top 5 allocated. It wasn't really allocated so well. But at least if at all more effort is done, at least we can see that we can achieve the agenda that the president really wants us to attain. And also when it comes to tourism, there's at least some decline. Yes, because when it comes to 10-fold agenda, it was agro-industrialization, manufacturing, tourism.
Knowledge-based economy.
Yes, knowledge-based economy. But we see those areas are still down when it comes to the allocation to the 37 trillion that was allocated to programs.
Right, I'll be coming back to you. I see you're concerned on debt. The president says we are still within the threshold. Even that's what the minister said. There is no need to worry. And so implying that they can continue even to borrow, because we have some key projects that are supposed to be undertaken, including the standard gauge railway, which is likely to cost us around $2 billion, according to the estimate we had seen at the time it was actually being conceived. We welcome the Honorable Geoffrey Ekanya, Truro North County MP. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much and good evening.
Budget day, budget speech.
Yes.
We already knew about the figures. Now we've had a strategy. We have had the zeal, the determination actually to put this budget into the direction that the government wants. Are you impressed with what happened today?
I'm impressed by my dear friend, Honorable Matia Kasaja. More than 2 hours. He was very steady at his age, very firm.
He has been away for quite some time.
Reading without having a reading glass. And I think he couldn't even complete a bottle of water. So we give him credit. And it's upon that we gave him standing ovation. But by and large, as you are aware, the budget moved from 52 trillion, the financial ending. And then we had a proposed medium-term expenditure framework which was presented to Parliament, which was 58 then 60. Then the MPs with the members of Parliament, the various sectoral committees or program areas presented proposal which ballooned the budget to over about more than 100 and something trillion shillings.
So it's you people who actually caused the budget to change suddenly.
Yeah, because we every sector made proposals, key areas that we as members of Parliament think must be funded to stimulate growth. And based on that, the government could only increase the figure by 12 trillion. But the minister was categorically clear. The resource available for appropriation and for development in this budget is only 6 trillion shillings without the donor funding included. 6 trillion. So you have a budget of 72 trillion shillings, but the rest is debt refinancing, donor financing, borrowing, and so forth. And it is here, it reads for record, because some people will say, what are you getting from? Wages. The minister stated that, Madam Speaker, The total government expenditure for 2024 is projected at 72 trillion shillings, of which the total appropriation is 37.56 trillion. 37 out of 72. So what figure do we have? Which means the others are going for debt. Yes.
Because when you look at that 37, even majority of the biggest percentage is actually going to go to paying like salaries and things
now
like that.
It then comes back. So you have a budget of 72 trillion, 37.5 is what is available for appropriation that Parliament passed. Statutory, these are for wages and salary, and statutory expenditure is 34.7 trillion. Now, the 34.7 trillion shillings is statutory, which is wage committed already, debt and so forth. 34.7. So and then the minister adds that wage and salary are projected to amount to almost 8 trillion. Non-wage recurrent is 17 trillion. These are expenditures which are not for development, seminars, movement, office things, non-wage recurrent. So 17.5 trillion plus 8 trillion, that's how much? 25 trillion shilling. Development expenditure from our own resources, and the minister was very kind, and I want to thank him, is 6.1 trillion from our own resources.
Own resources collected by URA.
Yes, so URA is projected to collect 31 trillion. Out of that, 25 trillion is going for wage, salary, and non-wage expenditure.
And only
then
6
also
trillion.
debt, paying part of the debt. 3 trillion of URA collection is going for debt and the rest. And only 6 trillion
will be available
for expenditure. That's not even 30% of our total collection. So Ugandans used to be worried. We need to increase our tax collection. Tax to the GDP ratio.
But how do we do it? People have been complaining about being overtaxed.
We need to widen the tax base, simplify its tax regime, and then implement tax expenditure. What the people of this country want is how do you use our money. There is a URA office in Old Kampala. The road to URA office has so terrible potholes. So taxpayers are saying, even to come to URA office, we cannot have good roads in order to pay you. So we need to implement pro-people tax expenditure. And we have repeatedly said, reduce cost of public administration. You cannot have a non-wage recurrent expenditure taking 17 trillion and then development taking 6 trillion. So 17 trillion is going to be not going to produce money directly.
Well, we are not seeing you asking those hard questions in the House, Honorable, because when it comes to taxes, it's you actually who sanction the taxes. When it comes to appropriating the budget, it's you people. When it comes to advising on policy, you're supposed to be the ones.
No, we say it, but the government needs to listen. I have repeatedly said, I'm on record here, that reduce the size of parliament. That one I've repeatedly said since 2001. We even moved a motion on Gichamuntu. We have repeatedly said reduce the number of cabinet ministers because these are consumed. Those are the areas which take non-wage, the 17 trillion shillings. We have said abolish office of the RDCs. Instead, government adds. We have said, like in Rwanda, and Museveni did it, by the way, I think in 1995, the reform, when it was said government official will co-own vehicle co-ownership. When we said secretaries will not need to have, because every person knows how to operate computers. Then recently we have borrowed even money for e-government. Avoid the seminars, avoid travel, because you can sit on your desk and hold public meetings. All that, and the infrastructure was set up. So there is wastage.
All right. And with this wastage, actually, and the big budget that we're talking about, if we do not collect more taxes, we are likely to go into borrowing. Earlier on, you raised concerns about borrowing, but the government seems to say that we are still within the threshold. Why should we be worried about the level of borrowing? And do you see any dangers going forward as UDN, your specific area is always looking at issues of the debt situation in our country? Penina.
When you look at the budget, like he has said,
Mm.
a lot of money when it comes to recurrent expenditure, it is a bit high compared to the development expenditure. And the recurrent expenditure, of course, there's no multiplier effect to the economy. There's nothing that is going to bring back to the economy. It's only the development expenditure that we think that whereby it will be adding some effort to the economy and to when it comes to revenue. So we see that the government, like if at all it can borrow and then it invests it in, at least when it invests it in it increases the budget for when it comes to development expenditure. That would be good. And if at all they borrow, at least there's some times we monitor, but the evaluation is at a lesser extent. The impact. We have to know if at all URS collected this money, invested in this road, and then we give in a timeline. Of course, if at all this road, at least if at all they've constructed this road, how is it like? Is it how the duration of the road, the durability of the road? Because when it comes when we bring in this thing of climate financing, at least when let me say climate change, because we see most of the roads are that in dilapidated state because of climate. Like the weather changes. Then if at all they can do roads that are climate change resistant, like they at least when they can take up and expand
They have a longer lifespan.
Yes, at least that can save us some money, and then we can take at least even we can say that even when we borrow, that at least our money has been invested in some areas that are really productive. Because people, when they raise their revenue, at least they want to know where is it going. Because yes, government has done for Ugandans, but Ugandans are saying yes, government has done nothing for us, because they are seeing their money. People are perceiving that their money is being eaten by members of parliament, by people in top positions, but government is saying, but we are putting this money. At least let us have a government whereby government that does for people and people appreciate. Let there be somewhere where they can evaluate the impact of the money they have invested somewhere else.
All right.
Yes.
But Peter, Penina raises a very important issue of why we are borrowing and where we are putting the money. Before we go for the break, very quickly, we need to deal with this issue of borrowing. Are we doing it the right way? Are we borrowing for the right reason? Because sometimes we even hear that we have funds that are not being utilized.
Yeah. And that is the exact point I wanted to say. Borrowing per se is not bad. Provided, as you have said, you are borrowing for what? Because to develop, even as an individual sometimes, you need money to develop. So you can borrow actually from a commercial bank, invest rightly, and then you make money. So we have two kind of people: the lenders and the borrower. So even the government needs to, after borrowing, where do we invest? Remember, there is this issue you have just mentioned, the issue of absorption of funds. The other day, the World Bank was also complaining that our absorption of funds is very low. So imagine you have a loan. Sometimes we start paying the loan even before we have the funds, before we borrow, before the project is passed, before we are ready, because we have been told there is a loan here. So we have even had, those days I heard there were even loan brokers for the government. People would keep around the corridors. There is a loan here, borrow here. So you are forced to take a loan. We don't know where it is going. But if you borrow a productive loan, given that our resource envelope is still low, we can make more money. And following that, with these proposals which we are seeing in the budget, like on agriculture, if we people now join the money economy, then we can tax them. Because you cannot tax people who have who don't have the money, and that's why I think our tax register has been low. But also, the issues of tax evasion, tax avoidance, studies have been showing there are so many people who don't pay tax. Whether they are in informal sector, they are largely informal, and therefore they don't want to be taxed. And that's why you saw a lot of noise on IFRIS, because now everybody now is saying, hey, these people can come for us. So we need to improve on tax efficiency, the tax leakages, the corruption, but also ensure that the money is well invested.
All right. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for a break now. When we return, we'll hear from the Honorable Geoffrey Ekanya on the issue of debt. Debt seems to be one of the key issues because it's taking away from the national budget 34 trillion shillings in order to service the debt. But we continue to borrow. Are we borrowing for the right decision? Are we borrowing for the right reasons? Parliament has a mandate to actually clear some of these loans. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after this break.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are looking at the national budget speech as delivered by the Minister Matia Kasaija, Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, on behalf of President Yoweri Museveni. But the President also spoke there and articulated the direction where the Ugandan economy is actually going to go. Before we went for the break, we had put our focus on the issue of the national debt, and now I want to bring in the Honorable Geoffrey Ekanya to share his views on that particular issue. Honorable Ekanya, should we be worried, or should we take the word of the government as articulated by the President but also the Minister of Finance that we are safe?
We are safe if we are disciplined, but we are not safe if we have indiscipline. But let me first put the record clear. Some listeners are coming in and out, that our total budget was for this coming 2024-25 72.136 trillion shillings. Now, out of that, URA will collect projection of 29.3 trillion.
29.3 trillion.
Then the fees people pay, like fine, police fine, the telecom and so forth, will be 2.6 trillion. That makes a URA collection of 31.9 trillion, because all this is collected by URA. Then budget support grants we have from the international community is 1.3 trillion. I'm rounding to the nearest. Okay, 1.3 trillion. We are going to borrow from the domestic market. I don't know how this will be, because they needed to be clear. 9 trillion shillings. 9 trillion. Sometimes the borrowing is by issuing treasury bills and treasury bonds, or going direct through to commercial banks, and sometimes government borrow from like NSF, 9 trillion shillings. Then government has borrowed, they did the treasury statutory revisions. They're again going to borrow to clear debt of Bank of Uganda, treasury bond for settlement of government outstanding obligation to Bank of Uganda. I think they did a drawdown in Bank of Uganda with 7.7 trillion shillings. This is also now a debt. We are going to do borrowing to clear debt. This resource not available. Domestic refinancing, there are debts which is maturing. They are going again to borrow, roll it out. The debt we should have paid, now we are going to borrow to keep the debt and pay some interest. 12 trillion shillings. So when you add the 7.7 plus 12 trillion, that is 19.7. And then you add these are the debts we have to clear, and then we have external financing. We are going to borrow externally to support the budget, about 9.5 trillion. So you are right. So this is 19.7 plus 10. That comes how much? About 30 trillion. Is going to clear debts or more borrowings. So this 9 is borrowing to finance a budget. It's not to clear the debt. The refinancing of the debt, borrow to pay the debt is 12 trillion, and then borrowing Bank of Uganda is 7.7.
So would you agree we are still in a good shape when it comes to borrowing?
No, our problem, by the way,
from the President's statement, we seem to be having some ambitious projects, including standard gauge railway coming up. We are going to continue repairing the meter gauge railway. We have to actually deal with the issue of water transport. We have to do irrigation. All these projects may need a lot of money.
Our problem, as you're aware, our loan to which government has not utilized is in trillions of our debt.
The money we have already,
yes,
we are not
approved,
using.
which we are not utilizing, is trillions. I can't remember the figure, whether 14 trillion or more than in dollars. So the record is there. You can check. Our problem is inflating cost. you can borrow, utilize, generate growth, employment, and generate taxes. But our problem, one, is we commit this resource, the donors commit, and then we pay commitment fee, we pay processing fee, we don't utilize the money. 3, a kilometer of a road in Uganda is one of the highest in sub-Saharan Africa. We inflate cost of construction, of projects. Our cost almost is higher by 40%. Instead of doing 3 kilometers of road, we'll do 2 kilometers. Instead of putting up a 10 classroom block, we'll do 6 classroom block. That's where the problem is. And we need to stamp out. So besides huge cost of public administration, the issue of corruption and what is called allocative non-efficiency. We are not effective in the way we allocate resources. So we need to sort out this, and this is where we need to keep punching the message to government. The government tried to bring in UPDF, and I am aware of a project where UPDF, some company wanted to do the project at about 340 billion, no, 400 billion. But UPDF said this project, we can implement it at 310. And the government said, you can see UPDF is requesting for 310 billion.
The other one is requesting.
The others are asking for 400 billion. Now, UPDF is not going to be a solution. You need this money to circulate in the economy. UPDF, the money UPDF also uses some Chinese, some Indians to support them because they're building capacity. But that's better. But we need to have core unit cost of construction and implementation of key projects like the standard gauge railway, the meter gauge railway, construction of power dams, construction of schools and hospital, unit cost. And then we need to indigenize this economy. The companies that are building this project, implementing projects, most of it are owned by foreigners, 90%.
Okay.
So you have a project of like a Ministry of Energy, they have more than 1 trillion, more than 2-3 trillion, they have several power projects.
But most of this money is going to end up in the hands of the foreigners.
Yes, and so they will externalize.
All right.
So the resource will not remain here, stimulate growth and employment.
All right. Dr. Bayenda, Olube Kanya brings in a very interesting issue. President Yoweri Museveni praising the Ugandan private sector, saying it's the backbone of the economy, and therefore they need to have cheap money. And he's saying it's already being provided through PDM, Emioga, UDB, for those who are interested in wealth creation. But we are also seeing the government actually borrowing from the local market. And people have been complaining and saying this is direct competition with the private sector, and therefore the interest rate is likely to go up, and then they will shut out the private sector. Do you see the Ugandan private sector actually being supported in this budget, looking at what has actually been stated today?
Yeah, I actually loved that statement by the president. I was part of the team that developed the second national strategy for the private sector development in Uganda. And these were some of the issues, the high cost, competition with foreign-owned farms, and the issue of resources, our resources capacity, but there was also another issue of integrity, which the honorable has talked about, the issue of inflating costs and so on, and not failing to deliver projects and so on. But the private sector is also being affected now by the presidential directives, some of them to the procurement. When the president writes and says this procurement should go to this company.
So there's no competitive bidding.
Yeah, competitive bidding is being killed, and the private sector
losing out.
But when you look at the budget, as you have said, the monies are there for them, but the conditions of getting this money. There is also another issue of many Ugandan companies. I know that is by design, by fear, or lack of awareness, not wanting to become formal. They look at being formal as a dangerous thing. But actually, formalizing your business is one of the best if you are to grow. And more so, now with our stock exchange market, the Uganda Security Exchange market, we really need to encourage some of our successful private companies to list on the market so that they are able to get some money through the sale of shares from the public, So if these funds, if we try to reduce on the conditions of accessing this money, like I've seen the UDB, I think has been given 50 billion, but most of this money I think is not utilized because of conditions. There is agricultural credit facility in the Bank of Uganda. There is an energy facility credit in the Ministry of Energy for renewables, those who want to invest in the renewable sector. So there is some money, but the information and the conditions and formalization of our businesses remain very key, and the issue of capacity.
All right. From you, Bayenda, do you have hope in this budget that is actually going to work? One of the key issues people from civil society have been talking about is the issue of transparency and accountability, and of course the issue of corruption has been high. We know there are some MPs who are actually being tried in court for apparently trying to influence the budgeting process and get some money from there. President Yoweri Museveni speaking tough about it the other day, the State of the Nation address, and today he further talked about it and saying those who are involved in corruption are actually betraying the people who fought for liberation of this country. Do you think the president has finally started taking on the corrupt?
Like earlier this morning, we had a session. Still, it was about corruption, and one of my colleagues brought in something that was like, the president can come up and say these people are corrupt, but actually it's like a diversion. But there's some other people that really need to be touched, that they find themselves untouchable, and you like that issue of like Mabati. Yeah? There are many people.
Iron sheets.
The iron sheets. Yes, there are many people that were involved, but few people were sanctioned, and others were able to get away. When you look at the money we lose in corruption, it is 9.44 trillion. Yes, and if at all we are able to recover that money, it can do some good change to us, and it can be invested in other areas, that some other key sectors that can really drive the economy to the next level. So I say that corruption is still like something that a joking subject. Right now is to take it something that is really free, something that you can roam about it, and you can be very okay. If I told you corrupt, they will just talk about it. In the end, it will just stop there.
Honorable Kanya, there were some reports we were told that around Parliament there, wherever your colleagues would see security people moving around, some people were scared and thinking probably they were going to be arrested. Has the fear reached that far at Parliament?
No. I think
you people handle the budget, but you are planning even to steal from Ugandans through the national budget.
No, I think that information is not correct. First of all, a member of Parliament and any Ugandans, if you have any matter in court, you cannot run away. You are now living in a global village. And you cannot say, now when I appear in Parliament, I will be arrested. Government can even arrest you from any hiding place. So I think basically it is the media creating creating an impression that members of Parliament are running away, and the members of Parliament who are scared. It is not true. The record like today, virtually majority of the MPs stand up, apart from I think some few MPs might have been engaged elsewhere. So that is not true. But then the question of members of Parliament being involved in corruption, you see you are innocent until proven guilty, and that matter is in court. We will leave it there. The concern to which the public, which has been raised, is the members of the Budget Committee, and I've stated the roles of members of Parliament need to be understood. We as MPs, our role is to ensure that we direct resource to key strategic areas that can stimulate growth. And we do it in a collective way, because the budget process starts with consultation, which starts in August. The civil society, the local government, budget called circular, all government departments make proposal. Then we look at the previous year's recommendation, and then we present our proposal back to the executive presents budget proposals, we discuss, then we send it back to government, and then government makes recommendation, then we conclude. So the question of MPs putting resource, for example, some of us And this because public information. If you look at the budget report of last year, we made changes in areas which are strategic, like we moved money to support agriculture. And I saw last year the president launched the tractor, and members of parliament, we increased numbers. We also provided money for some institutions like the NDA Bank, which the president talked about, the Minister of Finance talked about it, so that we can fight corruption. That we have the end. We put the money for building of hospitals where we think that the Minister of Health had omitted out. We put money shifted money for building of schools to areas which are in need. We shifted money in consultation really for doing roads to key strategic area. We also reduced this money where we thought that there was going to be waste. We removed money for travels, for seminars from some government departments. We removed money from some government departments which did not have plans, procurement plan, did not have activity plans. There was excess money for non-wage. So it is a collective process, and therefore I think the public need to understand that the role of parliament cannot be watered down by the arrest of my colleagues. Members of parliament must continue doing oversight, must continue doing monitoring, must continue doing appropriation and representation. This is one of incidents to which we will have to pray that it ends and justice prevails.
All right. Let's hear from you, Dr. Bayenda.
Yeah.
On the issue of corruption.
The issue of corruption is a serious issue. And if we can eliminate it, it can't be eliminated, but if we can try to minimize, because it had reached far, if you hear the deals making, you see, we are one of the countries with a lot of very good steps to capture corruption. Look at the process the projects pass through to be passed. The process is very good. But every step where the project initiators are reaching, people are asking for something, and that's what makes the project. And so it's not only the MPs. It's a big racket. Just as the president said, if you want your projects to be approved, you have to give us this share. And so finally, you find that the money that has remained for the project are very less. So we call upon everybody to come on board in fighting this vice. And we know they're corrupt. Even the society is aware of this person is corrupt by the virtue of what you are doing. So it is not easy to fight corruption, as they always say, because of lack of evidence. So we call upon that it should be a joint process, and without corruption, with minimal corruption, we can do a lot. Some of these interventions, for example, of say on climate change, as he talked about. For example, there was a program of distribution of free LPG. This was a very good initiative. Distribution now of solar pump, but who is going to get the solar pump? That's where the corruption comes in. You find that the person who would afford is the one receiving, and therefore the intended goal of the intervention dies out. Then in the budget, of course, they talked of the agro-industrialization. I also wanted to mention there, I don't know what exactly are we going to do here, because I am aware that we have so many mills, government-owned mills, for value addition in maize, and which are lying idle.
Yes, no power connected.
No power connection, and so
the farmers are not supported.
Yes. So as we are doing this, it should be a wholesome process, so that we don't waste. We don't waste the resources. The issue of absorption is another issue, as the Honorable has said, that we have loans that we are paying for and we have never utilized.
All right, let's try to sum up. I'll begin with you, Honorable, and then I'll come to you, Penina. In terms of performance, this budget, to make sure that it actually delivers, what advice would you give to the government?
First of all, I used to be a board member of UDN. Penina, I'm proud of your presentation, and I'm proud of UDN. Thank you very much. Now, in this budget, the good part of it, by the way, we provided the money for local councils. They get some money for paying their allowance, LOC3s and those councillors. They call it a gratuity. I think some of them are not good for
What are you
quite
trying to
some
motivate
time.
there?
Yeah, because that's the little they can get, and for some years they were missing. We also have ensured that more PDM, this PDM money, by the way, about 1 trillion shillings, is stimulating growth in the rural areas. But the government needs to prepare to make sure that the boom in harvest, there is a market for it, and the guaranteed quality management and so forth. So that's a good part of this budget. We have also provided money for foot and mouth disease to ensure that the vaccine will now be available and farmers will be able to buy it. To me, if we complete the standard gauge, the meter gauge railway repair, I move along that road, Jinja, Kampala. Our life is at risk every day. The road in shambles. So we want the Jinja Express to start, and part of the money in this budget. Now, this talk about infrastructure development that can spur growth. So the money is there. That Jinja Express takes off. We have the meter gauge railway repaired up to Gulu, up to Kampala. So many cargo will now be going on railway. So the people along the railway, when I was growing, we used to have so many business centers up to Gulu. Stopovers. And it's going to be very good. So we need to have that business centers and the hub. And we'll stimulate export to South Sudan. We'll stimulate exports to Congo via Arua. We need to ensure that there is peace in the region. If you listen to the budget speech, export in terms of beer, soap, cooking oil, plastic to East Africa has contributed greatly in terms of foreign exchange. So most people want to understand the opportunities available in the region within the ESC. Congo is a virgin market, more virgin and more productive. And there is also money within this program. Agriculture, really the government has moved in terms of providing tractors and ambulances. Toro County North is going to get ambulance. My constituency will get ambulance. We are getting health centers being upgraded to health center 4. We have primary schools going to be renovated and several city schools. But in terms of creating jobs, what we need to focus is to indigenize the economy. We need to ensure that any foreign investor who comes here, you must have a Ugandan holding more than 51% shares. We have to make sure that Ugandans, 80% of the workers are Ugandans. That's only we can retain and stimulate growth. And once Ugandans have money, they'll be able to consume and be able to pay tax. Therefore, we shall grow our tax to GDP. We will collect more than 31 trillion. We can easily move to collecting 50 trillion shillings if we indigenize the economy.
All right. Penna, your closing remarks as we come to the end of this show. What message would you want the government actually to take, especially on the side of making sure that this budget works? Even as we borrow more, we should be able to see value at the end of the day.
My message to government, I would say, it should look at the commitment fees it accumulates, like when it borrows and then it doesn't utilize those loans, because we see 440 billion is lost in commitment fees annually. And then if at all we keep on paying, if that money keeps on accumulating year per year, it will lead to it will exacerbate, like it will increase our debt. You see, so if I told you those commitment fees are reduced, that can be of good use. It can be of good use to the economy and to the people. And would also they say the government should look on clearing the domestic areas. By June 2023, it was 10 trillion. But we see that they're just paying 200 billion in clearing domestic areas.
So it means very many people supplied government are not being paid.
Yes.
That is borrowing directly from the public without paying interest.
That's actually killing the private sector.
Crime.
Yes, and if the private sector is going to be one of the key drivers to the 24th agenda.
And we cannot indigenize the economy the way you're saying. Very quickly, Dr. Bayenda, as we come to the end of the show, your closing remarks.
Yeah, just to add on what she has said, paying domestic carriers is actually killing our private sector. And it had also brought in those bad manners we have been saying of corruption, where some accounting officers would actually tell the if you can do like this, then we can
do like this,
pay you earlier. So we really need to. But there's also another thing that the speech and also the president talked about, the skilling of the youth. I think that this will be a game changer. When you visit most of these skilling centers, there is a lot of crowding. Even the vet institutions, we are using outdated training equipment. The tutors are not skilled. So I think now that I've seen money in the budget, I hope we are going to prioritize equipment for training of our youth, give them money for innovations, especially in the ICT knowledge economy, so that they are more innovative and then more jobs.
All right. Well, with that, we come to the end of Spectrum. Let me thank you, my dear panelists, for actually making time to be with us today. And tomorrow, we'll be still looking deeper into this budget speech on Spectrum Extra, 2 hours of analysis of the top events of the week. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BP Junior.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of this radio station or its management.